Hello. I was listening to the old sessions, Michael, because I sent them to you. So as people are joining, we'll just have a little chat because we'll give people a chance to get in. But it was so funny because I was like, I start every session the exact same way, like singing hello and asking people what the weather's like where they are. So I like have to get a little bit creative about how I start these sessions. So it helps to have a celebrity guest. I will say that. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the celebrity part. I used to refer to myself as a B celebrity because
Oh, come
I host
on.
a show. I got
Yeah.
to meet lots of A celebrities, but I don't do that anymore. So I think I've given up my B celebrity status. But I'm okay with that because I get to do things that mean so much to me, like this.
Yeah.
I get to
Yeah.
talk about a subject that's not sports, which I
Right.
enjoy as well. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And I want to welcome everyone. And you are welcome to tell me what the weather's like where you are or say hello in the chat because I'd love to see you and really like your thoughts during this session because we have some good conversation starters and we're all experts here. And I think it's really important to hear from you as well. So thanks for joining and taking the time. Hi, Sherry. My friend Sherry Angles on the call. Michael, she just said hi in the chat. Sherry and I are going to run our next session together. But it's funny, Michael, when I was thinking about you on Jeff Waldman. Hello, hello, Katrina. So when I was thinking about you, Michael, I was thinking you had this amazing opportunity that you created for yourself, really. We were just talking about your career because everyone knows I'm very interested in careers. And I thought of like a windmill, right? Like you could have taken that career and what you did and your life's work in any direction, and you chose to help share your story to help people with their mental health. You've been a personal help to me with your program, which I'm going to talk a little bit about during the session. And I just want to say thank you. Like that's a really honorable thing to do when you would have had the power and let's face it, celebrity to do pretty much anything with your career. So I think you chose to do really good things, and that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I found something. Thank you for saying that. I found something that I could do some good, but also do some good for me.
Yeah.
So, this whole second act on my life, talking about mental health every day, like I'll go give a talk. And when I leave that room, I know I'll have made a difference. But also, when I
Yeah.
leave that room, a difference will have been made in me. Often, I
Oh.
think I get as much as I give. I mean, this sense of, of doing something with purpose, with use, not youth. Although use can
And
be
youth,
good
yeah.
for showing yourself that you have use. So I do feel like I get back a lot, and I get to use
Yeah.
the worst thing in my life, which has been mental illness, as one of the best things in my life. So
Right.
I think you're blessed when you get to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I just saw Sarah on the call who I know, and she does similar thing. I believe Sarah, sorry if I've got this wrong, but with her ADHD, she does talks about that. And attended one of them recently, and it was very, very good. Now I'm going to share my screen and go backwards because I realize I'm on the wrong. Actually, give me one sec, and I'm going to go to the slide that we're supposed to be on before, because Michael and I were preparing beforehand. So let me share the screen here. And again, thank you for joining. I see more and more people coming on. We've got a big crowd today. I just wanted to give a little warning, a little trigger warning, because we are going to be including, discussing some difficult topics like suicide. And I just think that it's important to let you know before we get into these conversations that some of the topics related to mental health may be difficult. I can also tell you that we are recording the session. So that should help if you need to kind of tune out. That's fine. I will make sure you have the recording of the session. Kamara Toffolo will be in the comments. She'll be sharing some of the links that we're going to be discussing today. So thanks, Kamara, for joining us. So September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. And this is a really important one. I think the timing is really important too, because I saw, Michael, you kind of dip in and out of LinkedIn. I'm always watching to see what you're doing on there. And you did talk about people saying I don't know, happy Canada Day, or, and I'm thinking of the holiday season. And it's not always a happy time for people. In fact, it's a time when people can feel more isolated than ever. So this is a really important time to talk about mental health and suicide prevention on the lead up to those holidays, on the lead up to the gloomier weather in some parts of the world, certainly where we are as well. So I wanted to kind of recognize that and talk a little bit about that. Before I do that, though, uh, one way to help people is offer them outplacement when they are going through career transition. We've had some great success with our participants even recently when the job market has been a little bit more challenging. We had someone who over the summer got back to work within 2 weeks after joining our program. So we were pretty proud of that. I'll send you some information about our outplacement after, but it's work that I love doing. And we really do love helping our participants recover from job loss and get back to work. And our onboarding course has launched, and we're offering the first program, the first lesson for free. So you're welcome to share that. And Kamara is going to share our outplacement brochure as well as the link to that first session and information about that in the comments as well. So if you haven't met me before, I'm Amy Davies. I run First 30. I know we have a lot of new people in our community joining today, so welcome and thank you so much for your interest in this session. Now, Michael, yesterday I actually did a post about the Bloor Street Viaduct and the barrier that they put in place to prevent suicides. And I said at the time, I kind of rolled my eyes like, how is this really going to help you stop someone for a moment? But actually, it does make a difference. And I learned that my eye roll was silly and ridiculous because it does help people. The gift of time can help people. A small intervention at the right moment can make a meaningful difference in people's lives, and they may never contemplate suicide again. My life has been touched by suicide. I had a family member who committed suicide, and it's really hard. It has a ripple-on effect that affects everyone. So the way I see us and our discussion today is really about being that netting for people, right? Like, we're going to talk about HR's role specifically, and I really don't want to leave anyone with the impression that HR is responsible if things go wrong. You are not. You are not trained to be therapists, but maybe it's the programs that we put in place that can really help people. And by way of more formal introduction, Michael, many of you will know Michael Landsberg from his, broadcasting days and important work in that space. And then you went very public, for anyone who doesn't know, on television about your mental health struggles. And you really started helping people by being open about your struggles. And I don't think you were someone people would have guessed had those issues. And you built this amazing program called First Step, which organizations are using to support their employees and help them to I know you do many things with this program, Michael, but I'm thinking about our people in our audience today. And I want to be really open about the fact that I had a really bad start to 2025. Just by chance, you and I met, and we had a wonderful conversation and dinner, and you gave me access to this program so I could learn more about it and share information about it. And it happened to help me. And I quite honestly, hand on heart, it did change my outcome. I did make a ton of changes in my life in the pursuit of better mental health for myself. So thank you for that, Michael. And thank you for this wonderful program. And I know Kamara is going to share more information. But that's it. I'm going to stop talking. It's time to start asking you some questions, Michael. Michael does public speaking now on mental health. He has this program. You do a lot of work with Green Shield, who sponsored this program as well, Michael. So thank you again for joining us today.
I get to talk now?
You do, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'll take a breath. I'll have a sip of tea. You can talk.
Yeah, you can do that. Thank you for having me. The Bloor Viaduct that we want to be people's netting, I think, is a really good metaphor for what it is we all want to do. And one of the greatest tragedies that any of us can experience in our life is caring about someone who takes their own life. And I have spoken every day about mental health, probably for the last 15 years. So I've spoken to a lot of people who attempted suicide, did not complete suicide. And they tell this story of how happy they are that they didn't, how
Mm.
their lives totally changed after that when they realized, I'm on the verge of ending my life. I got to do something about this. And it's incredibly powerful to hear somebody talk about their attempted suicide and the fact that since then they've gone on to smile again. And that's
Hmm.
I think that's everybody's job. That's HR's job, is to make it part of the conversation. Silence is suicide's greatest ally. When you don't talk about it, you open the door a little bit for it. And I have no answers, definitive answers for anything. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, well, if you talk about it, it won't happen. But I can tell
Yeah.
you, if you talk about it, if parents talk to their kids about suicide, there's at least a small chance that their kid would go to them and say, I have these thoughts, but if you've never brought it up, if you've never talked about mental health in the workplace as an
Hmm.
HR professional or in the home as a parent, I think you lessen the chances of having good communication.
Yes. And yeah, talking about it is, like you say, the first step. And you were a really good first example of that, especially when it comes to men's mental health, because men are so much less likely to have maybe the support system and have been practiced in sharing their feelings about that. But, I'm curious to know, you have been so open about your own mental health journey, something that I think many people, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Many people would struggle with doing. What really was your motive? What motivated you to start and be so honest about what was going on in your life and your challenges?
Okay, well, I'm going to talk really quickly because there's a long answer to this, and I want to try to jam everything in. And if you don't
Okay.
understand what I'm saying now, you play it back and slow it down later on. But
We can
uh, I've
transcribe everything.
I battled anxiety all my life. When I was
Hmm.
a kid, I had fears that other kids didn't have. I have something called a metaphobia, which is the fear of throwing up, which is the fear of
Oh,
being around people who throw up, talk about
oh,
throwing up. And it's the biggest shock to me was when I met somebody else who battled it.
wow.
And the second biggest shock was when I found out that it's actually the fourth most common phobia,
Yeah.
emetophobia. And this is the lesson that I learned and try to apply to my life now. When I was a kid, if you would have said, there's actually there's other people out there who are experiencing this, would have changed my life because I would have realized, I'm not a loser, I'm not weak. I just have this thing and other people have it. And if they have it, it must be not something that I fabricated in my mind. So anxiety all my life. And then when we had our second child, Casey, she was diagnosed with a serious eye condition, and I had no coping strategies because I started off with general anxiety disorder, and I just became obsessed with fear and worry. And what I've learned subsequent to that is that when I become obsessed with fear and with worry, I get depressed. It's like
Hmm.
anxiety maxes out. It's like, where's the anxiety going? Oh, I know. I'll turn to depression. And that's what I experienced for the first time, probably 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I only spoke about it on TV because I wanted to get a hockey player to talk about his experiences with it. His name is Stéphane Richer. I knew that
Yeah.
he battled depression in his career, so I thought, oh, I'm going to ask him in advance if I can ask him. I'd never spoken about it on TV because I thought no one would care. So I said to Stéphane, would it be okay if I asked you about depression? And he said, I don't like to talk about it. It's painful. And I said to him, well, if I will talk about it. Would that help? And he said, what would you talk about? And I told him a bit about my story. And he said, let's do it. We went on the air.
Oh,
We
wow.
talked about it for maybe a minute and a half. And that changed the course of my life, or at least the reaction did. I heard from tons of people who said that just hearing two men talk about depression without shame and embarrassment, and here's the key word, and without sounding and feeling weak,
Uh-huh.
empowered them to do the same thing. It's all about the fear of being seen as weak. I think that's at the heart of the stigma. And just talking about it in a casual way, especially this guy on TV who many people perceived as being arrogant. It's like, wow,
Mm.
Landsberg, depression, really? And that's what vaulted me into this change in life, where I found out that I had something inside me that could not only hurt me, but it could help others.
Yeah, and there, I think we talked about this when we were at the Green Shield event together in the green room, but I'm so curious because people might think about on this call even about sharing their struggles with mental health to help their colleagues and their teams. I went through a divorce, and I remember when that became public, it was a difficult one. And people started sharing more with me about their situations as well. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've been walking around like everything is perfect and my life is so buttoned down. And now it's really falling apart and it's very public how it's falling apart. I didn't make that decision, but it was. And then people started confiding in me more. But there's a responsibility that comes with that. And I think HR feels that responsibility too. So maybe you're just better at handling that than most people, but what happens next, right? Because then people start reaching out to you about their mental health struggles, and then you're taking some form of it could feel like you're going to have to take responsibility for that. So how do people juggle that with that feeling, of I'm going to put this out there or I'm going to open my door to these conversations, but how do I protect my own mental health as part of that?
I have you described me in
Hmm.
in the last decade, especially.
Yeah.
But I put myself out there. I
Yeah.
offer it when I go to give a speech. One of the things I'll say is, I'm going to give you my email address, and if you feel like you need someone that is safe, because
Yeah.
obviously I'm safe, and someone who understands you, which is like the most powerful thing a person like me can do, is to make people feel understood, then reach out to me. And I welcome that. Like I
Hmm.
said, it's this aspect of my life which is totally unexpected, and also it allows me to be a totally different professional.
Hmm.
And I truly enjoy the experience of trying to make a difference in someone's life. So, yeah, it can be difficult if it's difficult, but it's not for me. Uh,
Hmm.
I've never had a conversation with someone, even though I have spoken to people who were suicidal. I
Hmm.
spoke to a guy in Edmonton. He was in his car with a gun
Oh
saying,
my.
try to you better convince me, better give me a reason why I should stay alive. Now that was difficult.
Yes, of
Not
course
at
it
the
was.
time, but afterwards it was like, oh my God, like that
Yeah,
experience, like I'm not,
that's jarring and
yeah.
it's going to sit
But
with you.
I think, like I've said already, I get to use the poison inside me as someone
Yeah,
else's medicine, and that's a real blessing. And
yeah,
as a guy who has no hesitation whatsoever to share, like I'll talk about how depression has robbed me at times of self-esteem. Something guys don't always say, but to the point
right.
where shooting a TV show in the times when I was really, really depressed, I would look into the camera as I'm looking in now and believe to myself, inside my head, I would hear this voice, oh, Michael, you're terrible. People are like wondering, what the hell's
Yeah,
wrong with this guy? Like, how did
yeah,
you get this job? And using that to help others and to talk about it in a way that maybe they haven't heard before has value.
yes, it absolutely does. And thank goodness you did start talking about it. And when you hear stories like that with that person in the car, uh, you change the life of them and their family, and I'm sure many more. So, we hear mental health framed as a wellness initiative a lot, and I'm sure that a lot of the HR professionals on this call can relate to that. And I was thinking through this a little bit, and I'm going to share some information that I think will be helpful. But how can HR reframe it as a core business issue that's tied to productivity, absenteeism, and retention? Do you have ideas? Because I have some ideas that I'm happy to share. But sometimes companies they're like, okay, we have an employee assistance program. We're not like, what more do we need to do? Like, why do we need all these initiatives for people? And why do we have to invest in them?
Well, I mean, the second part of your question, why do we have to invest in them, is that it literally is an investment.
Mm-hmm.
I think you put up the Deloitte study, or you showed it to me. Deloitte did
Mm-hmm.
this study where their conclusion was the companies that spend money on mental health get a return on their investment of
Mm-hmm.
anywhere from $1.62 for a dollar committed up to $4 in the first year. So it
Yes.
makes sense in that regard, but it just makes sense in the human regard. What do you want your company to be seen as? Do you want your company to
Right.
be seen as a money machine and that's all? Or do you want
Yeah.
your company to be seen as a company that values its personnel? When you show people that they are valued, that you care about more than just their productivity, you change the way they see you, the way they see themselves, and they work better, they work more often, that they're not absent, and they stay longer at the job with,
Right.
so there's a million reasons to do it. But I think the best reason is that it's just the right thing to do. And
Yeah.
no one ever got hurt by talking about mental.
Yeah. And you and I know that sometimes it's just the and I'm sure most of the people on this call get that too. I know a lot of the people who are here today, and they're amazing and they do believe in these things. It's just like convincing your CFO to make the investment in it is the challenge sometimes. So I did put together some information for us, so that you can share that in your organization. I'm happy to send out the slides too if people find this helpful. But you'll see that, oops, sorry, I'm not being a very good driver of slides today. There's many, I couldn't believe this, that 500,000 Canadians miss work each week due to mental illness. That is a staggering number. And that one I think will be pretty convincing in organizations. And there's so much economics tied to, and I did not know what presenteeism was as well, to lost productivity, to absenteeism. Companies are losing an average of $6 billion per year in Canada. And for anyone who doesn't know, because I had to look it up myself, do you know what presenteeism is, Michael? I didn't know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I know, but I mean, this is this that is something
there's a
that
language you speak.
that's the language I speak. I mean, it's kind of like saying, do you know who played
Yeah,
quarterback for the New England Patriots when they
yeah.
won 6 Super Bowls? Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so presenteeism is when people show up, but they're not there. And they're not doing their work. They're not working certainly to their full capacity. I hadn't wasn't familiar with that term, and I thought it was an interesting one to share as well. But in the U.S., there are, also similar consequences. So 25% of employees rate their mental health as fair or poor. I'm sure that number is rising with all of the conflict going on, and all the issues going on there now as well. And so there's, again, multiple unplanned absences, which really does, of course, it's affecting the human being. But the important thing, I think, for HR professionals is that it's also affecting the company and its ability to function as a business. Because look at all of these people who are suffering, just not working to their full capacity. How can you really be invested in your organization if you're not even invested in yourself, right? And so there's approximately 47.6 billion lost in productivity each year for the US economy. So that one was really surprising to me. I don't know if anyone else has any stats that they find really interesting that they're welcome to share in the chat as well. Um, and so leaves of absence due to mental health have surged. They're up 33% from 2022 to 2023 and 300% from 2017 to 2023. And I don't know about you, Michael, but I feel that number is only going to go up.
Yeah, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't, since it's climbed steadily. I mean, we hope that some of the things that everybody on this call is doing or trying to do or will do, will make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
But it's it's a growing problem for sure.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it really is one of those things, though. You talk about a business and the commitment, and it's easy to commit. Like a good person who's on this call right now, who's doing HR at a company, it's easy to convince them that this would be a good idea. A mental health program, doing
Yeah.
this or that would be a good idea. But it's much more challenging, obviously, as you said, convincing the CFO.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and that, I think, is the big challenge that lays ahead.
You're absolutely right. We actually have some questions, and I would invite people to put their questions for Michael in the Q&A section. The chat can get a little busy, but if you put them in the Q&A, I'll be able to find them. So Jeff Waldman, hi again, Jeff. I know Jeff well. One of the challenges that HR leaders and practitioners have is we are not trained in dealing with and managing situations of mental health of employees. The last thing we want to do is pass the buck. Where is the line where we need to involve others, psychotherapists, etc.?
Always a tough question, because there's no way to quantify mental illness, right?
Right,
You quantify how sick your kid is. Do they have a fever? What's the number? But,
right.
and all kinds of illnesses, take a blood test, take an x-ray, take an MRI,
Yeah,
but this is
yeah,
all subjective.
yeah,
I think the biggest thing for somebody in HR is to start communicating, uh, which all you can do is start it. It's a two-way conversation, right? You can't speak for people, but you have to give them the confidence that they can come to you. Because having studied this before we built First Step, I started to learn the huge percentage of employees at companies that would never come forward to HR because they're convinced that it's going to hurt their career. So you got to pave the way. Your door has to feel like it's open, and then it will close behind them afterwards, and that they can share things with you. In fact, they should share things with you. I think the line is always that I never offer people advice on
right.
on treating their illness ever. My
Yeah.
goal is, I often say to people, the only bad treatment is no treatment.
Huh.
So it's hugely important to convince people to be proactive and to try to take away all of their reasons for not going for help. Most people, will tell you why they wouldn't go for help, from fear of being perceived a certain way at their company, from fear of the stigma and their fellow employees, from not knowing how to go about it. That's a huge thing, like
Mhm.
we all think it's easy because we all know how to do it, but many people are really not familiar with how to reach out to their EAP or how to use the allotment that they have or the allowance for mental illness.
It's so interesting you bring that up about the barriers. And I do think that that's a really good place for HR to start is think about what barriers or get people talking, like you said, about the barriers that they're going to confront. Because like with any goal, one of the things like I work with companies on some of their business goals and how do they drive retention. And they have all these big plans of how we're going to improve retention, how we're going to improve engagement. And I tell them to list their 4 top priorities. And then I don't want to stop at listing those priorities and thinking, oh, yeah, how are we going to do this? That's all fun and exciting. But the first thing I ask them is, okay, what is going to prevent you from achieving this first goal? Because unless you thought through the barriers and how to overcome those barriers, then you're not going to be as successful. My silly example is after we met, Michael, I was like, I need to work out like a lot more, like every day, just for my mental health. But my, gym is in the basement, and of course my closet is in my bedroom. So I brought all my gym clothes downstairs because I knew that that was going to be, this is a silly example, but one I think that brings it to life. If we know what the barrier is going to be, we find a solution, and then it makes the goal so much more achievable. And that happens every single day in organizations. So
I think that I would say that if it was me and it's not me, and I've never done the job that all of us on this call, except for me, uh,
oops. Yeah.
are doing or have done. But think
Yeah.
about why people aren't knocking on your door in the numbers
Right.
should be, or
Right.
why is EAP usage 10% or whatever, when you know that half your workforce is probably battling something. If you throw burnout into it, especially since the pandemic. It's a huge issue.
Right.
So why are all those people suffering in silence, and try
Yeah.
to address those reasons?
Especially when you have things happen, you have programs in place to support them. I did want to just draw attention to that. Sorry, I'm being a terrible driver again today, but you made the point of the research into the what you get back from a relatively small investment. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone had a chance to see this slide as well, about the return for every $1 spent is $4 return to your organization. And I think that's a really powerful data point as well. So we have, we were just talking about employee assistance programs, and I think that there's many underutilized programs out there, and I think that people on this call will be like, yes, we put it in place. It's the right thing to have something in place. But how do we make those programs, including Michael, your work, your program, First Step, how do we make these feel more accessible to people and not just, there and good to have, but how do we get people actually using these?
That is, usage is a huge problem.
Yeah,
I tell companies, before I license them, First Step, or before we get into real details,
yeah,
if you don't draw people's attention to it, they're not going to watch it. People don't go, "Oh my gosh, I would love to watch a show on
yeah,
mental illness. Wow,
yeah,
depression. I love that talk." So I
yeah.
think whether it's First Step or anything else, it has to be part of the dialogue. It has to come from you, and better than that, it has to come from the very top. It has to be, to get a CEO or somebody, in the C-suite, to talk about the importance of mental health, to talk about what this company has done for people, or is doing, or providing for them, can have huge impact. And the
Hmm.
key to doing it is, I think, showing vulnerability. No matter who you are, if you want people to buy into mental health talk, you need to show vulnerability. And not everyone has a mental health story to tell, but everybody has something. I tell, when I speak to people that I'm trying to convince to do that, I'll say, well, what is it that kind of you feel uncomfortable talking about to all of your employees? What is
Yeah.
that thing, or what are a few things? Those are
Mm.
the ones that you
Yeah.
want to share, because
Yeah.
vulnerability is contagious. If you want people to show vulnerability to you, or to HR, or on their own to go to their EAP, then show it to them. Show that you're playing the game as well.
I absolutely love that. You're so right because you showed your vulnerability. I didn't try to, but my vulnerability was exposed in my organization and that brought people to us. One of the things that leaders and organizations do, and I think it works against their business goals, and I think it works against supporting people with mental health challenges, is everything is great here. We're perfect. This organization is great. And I always try to counsel people, stop saying how great everything is. If there's problems in your systems and approaches, like be open about, you don't have to be bashing the organization, but you're allowed to be critical. And by being open about your criticism, you're allowing other people to open up. Jeff, I'm not going to ignore your question. I am going to come back to it because he asked the second question. But Andrew West has a question about what is the access to mental health awareness training in Canada for employees? He's in the UK, and his employer provides and allows access to many different forms of mental health, I'm going to say information, training, awareness to help people. So, is there any programs that people can take in Canada? Actually, what I would invite people to do is on the chat, if you're aware of these programs, please share them in the chat as well, because we're not going to be able to know everything.
I don't. Did you ask me a question?
Oh,
Uh,
no, I was just thinking,
oh,
Andrew was asking a question just about mental health awareness training and what's available in Canada for employees. Obviously, first step is you're not training people to necessarily to help other people, but it's certainly training you to take the first step with your own mental health and giving you options and having people open up about like people you wouldn't expect again to have all these mental health challenges. They're opening up, so it gets you to think about yourself and being more vulnerable and open about your mental health as well.
I just the way I see it, anything that people feel like they can relate to. I mean, this is
Yeah.
one of the things that when I originally pitched Green Shield on First Step, it was like, there is a place for the clinical talk for sure,
Yeah.
but people don't connect with a description of medical symptoms. People connect with feelings. Like I talk about, what does depression do to me? Depression robs me of my ability to experience joy.
Yeah.
So no matter what happens when I'm depressed, I don't feel joy. I can know
Right.
something should make me feel joy. I could win the lottery and think to myself, okay, well, that's a great thing. Think of all the things that I can do and the security and my kids and all of that. But I wouldn't feel joy. And
Mm-hmm.
that is something, Amy, I
Mm-hmm.
have given 150 talks to thousands of people. And I always ask, how many have battled an illness like depression or anxiety? And obviously, depending on the audience, there's many people that wouldn't put up their hand. And that's
Right.
one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I'm there. But when
Yeah.
they put up their hand, I say, okay, I'm going to tell you about my experience with depression. And you
Mm-hmm.
tell me, raise your hand if you haven't experienced the same thing: loss of joy, loss of self esteem, this feeling of hopelessness, this feeling of fatigue, not the tired like you are when you're when you're tired, you stayed out late or whatever. It's the tiredness that comes from being tired of being. So like I go through these things, not one person, not one out of 150 talks has ever said, no, not me. So I think sharing things that make people feel like they're understood, that's where the connection comes. How does someone like me walk into a room of 500 people at a company? I haven't met any of them. I don't know any of them. How can I create a connection? And I can create that
Mm-hmm.
connection by showing vulnerability and showing those that have experienced a mental illness that they are understood. That's the ticket. That's the key, I think, to opening the door.
You mentioned another key, which you tell me if you think it's right or not. You're not necessarily labeling it like mental health struggles, or, you're saying you don't feel joy, you feel this way or another way. That way, you're allowing them to admit they have these feelings without necessarily putting a label on it that they might be uncomfortable with, which I think is very helpful for people as well to get the conversation started, right?
I agree. I mean, that's, like
Yeah.
without mentioning mental illness or without mentioning the word depression or anxiety, to talk about the experiences that people have gone through and to talk about your own experience and to say, okay, well, this is, like for a year, nothing I did brought me joy. So I'd wake up in
Yeah.
the morning and I would know nothing is going to feel good today. So I have
Yeah.
the attitude like, why would I get out of bed if
Right.
and that, without mentioning mental illness, conveys something that people don't understand. Like I have to tell
Right.
you that when I experienced depression for the first time, it was like, holy smokes. I was going to say holy shit, but I wasn't sure I could.
Oh.
Holy smokes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. This is what depression is. I had no
Yeah.
idea, none,
Yeah.
that that's
Yeah.
what it was. And
Yeah.
as a result, I think people are hugely empowered when they find out that what's gone on in their heads has gone on in somebody else's head.
Right. And I do, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to like keep promoting it, but that's what happened to me when I watched your first step program is like someone said something and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is what I am feeling. There is a bigger problem here than I realize, and I need to start addressing it. And I addressed it in my own way. I didn't go out and go to a therapist or anything. I just started changing some of my habits that made me feel better. And I'm not labeling it as a mental health crisis or anything, but it was definitely my mood wasn't where it should be. And I needed to find ways to improve it that worked for me. I want to thank everyone in the chat because I'm noticing a ton of resources have been shared in the chat. So thanks, Dee, Katrina, Jeff. Sarah, for sharing all of these amazing resources. I really appreciate that. I was only going to add to all of this that some things that I do see, because I've worked in many organizations and I've never seen this happen, and I've had great HR departments, but HR is not marketing. So sometimes you have these great programs and services, but you don't know how to share them. So I have some ideas about how to share them, and I thought I would share those today about how to drive up usage of your employee assistance programs. One of them is to have little case studies. Like May was going through a divorce and she needed a lawyer and she didn't know where to start, because imagine you're going through a divorce or you're having some sort of issue where you need a lawyer and you don't know where to start. That's going to be distracting you from work, and there's all kinds of other things going on. But if you can speak to someone and get the advice you need, get clear answers instead of Googling and just going to ChatGPT and feeling like you're in a vacuum, actually speak to someone who knows what they're talking about and understands your personal situation. That can have such a great impact. But you could have all kinds of case studies, whether it goes to someone's diet, whether it's with the legal questions, whether it's with so many other things. They can, about their children, that maybe they can contact their EAP, but they need real life examples, how it was used, because again, people are afraid to call sometimes. They don't know if their employer's tracking their calls, but sharing that information, that it's confidential, and how to use it with specific examples will be quite helpful for your employees. And sending out monthly emails about the EAP with a new case study attached each month. All companies have corporate messages, or larger companies anyway. Maybe you can attach an EAP section to those email campaigns. And the last one is town halls. So use your town hall time to share a little bit about your employee assistance program. And hopefully this should drive up usage and get people more help. I don't know if you have anything to add to that or what you think of that, Michael.
Well, I mean, I think one of the best things you can do with town hall time, if that's what you call it in your organization, is to bring people in with lived experience to talk about mental
Sure.
health. Like, I mean, obviously that's something I do, but I'm not saying that to promote myself. It doesn't matter who it is. If you've got
Yeah.
someone who's willing to show vulnerability, the door is open for a short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you bring someone in and people go, yeah, that sounds like me. Maybe, and this is the question I ask, does your mental health allow you to live your best life?
Hmm.
That's the simple question. If the answer, after you really think about it and are honest with yourself, if the answer is, yeah, it does, then great. But if the answer is
Yeah.
not sure or no, then you got to do something about it. And the best time to really jump on people is after they've had that planted in their minds. So a town hall, I think, and the follow up can be really huge.
Right. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I wanted to, speaking of people with lived experience, I wanted to bring this up. You talked a little bit about this situation where you talked about your mental health and you had an LHLer who had just won. I mean, he hadn't at that time, but he was talking in reflection that he just won the Stanley Cup. I thought that video was so powerful because I saw that interview as well. And that I think leads to a really big problem that I think HR should be aware of when it comes to mental health. And I don't know what your thoughts are on it. So I wanted to get your thoughts on this as a risk point, where because you're sending people as HR, you're always like about travel safety. So there's lots of notices that go out about that, but we don't really think about or I haven't seen it happen. Maybe some people on this call think about this and do something about it. But if you're giving a big conference talk, or you're doing like you've just got a promotion, that might be like for some people like winning the Stanley Cup. And there can be a huge come down from that. And if you're not emotionally prepared for it, it can be pretty shocking. And you'll be surprised. You think you're going to be on cloud nine, and you've moved in the opposite direction in terms of your mental health.
I think that there's another aspect to that, which is it's if you've got a promotion
Hmm.
that most people would be, would be happy with. I think a really good way to cut through all the BS and find out, is this person okay? And is the question, are you feeling it? Like, this is a really good
Hmm.
thing,
Hmm.
like, I know you're acting like you're all happy, but are you truly feeling this life experience of something good happening to you? Um,
Yeah.
and if the answer is no, that's a pretty good indication that you have to do something about it. And we all have letdowns, right? Like when you build for something, and then you get there, even if you're wildly successful, or especially if you're wildly successful, there can be a slump afterwards, which I don't see as a mental illness. I see that slump afterwards as life that needs to be
Hmm.
dealt with, right? I mean,
Hmm.
sometimes
Hmm.
it's hard to distinguish between like what's depression and what's just sadness in life, because
Right.
sadness is
Right.
part of life.
Yeah. Yeah. Did that happen to you? Because you had like you're going through all of this, and then you probably had like big moments in your career. You're a broadcaster, you're out there, big things are happening all around you, and then you're reporting on them. Did you ever experience that? Because I know there's a term attached to it, which is post-achievement depression or post-event crash.
No, I had the pre-event depression.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
uh, um, no, I don't think I did experience that. My experience, though, with good things happening has been the frustration and the fear of not being able to feel the really good things.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but also the celebration of a good thing happening and feeling that joy. Like, nobody
Yeah.
appreciates their mental health if they haven't had it taken away, right? Like, people don't go, "Oh my gosh, like, I can't believe, I feel normal," right?
Right.
Unless you've had it taken away. No one celebrates the ability to walk unless they've had that ability taken away. And for
Hmm.
me, having had the ability to experience joy taken away means that when I do feel joy, I celebrate it in my own head at a level that others probably wouldn't. So,
Right.
but I do understand, the whole concept of the letdown, right?
Right, right. Well, then, like you're saying, there's maybe two sides of the coin. The checking in on people, maybe when you know they have a big event coming up, and then maybe sharing information about this post-achievement crash that can happen as well, so that people are able to see. It's like if there's an open manhole, you want to get help guide someone around it if you know what's going to be there, and that's kind of how we can act in our HR community is to help people kind of anticipate that manhole that's open to walk around it and give them a warning that this could be something that could happen to them, whether it's mental illness or simply just feelings that people are feeling. Like, I know that I personally have this post achievement crash. So I have actually worked in time for myself. If I'm presenting at a big conference or something, I know the next day to keep my calendar fairly light because I'm going to need that time to recover and just do whatever I need to do. I can't be in front of people the next day in the same way that I was the day before. So that has helped me. I'm just going to check on our Q&A because I did see some more questions coming in. And Jeff, I'm going to come back to your questions. Or question, are there specific investments that are more effective than others? Personally, the simple fact of spending money is not always the right answer. It's about focusing on things that aim at the root. What do you think about this? And again, I invite people to share in the chat as well. Money isn't always the answer. What else can we do?
Money is not always the answer, obviously.
Right.
And, as we've learned, spending money on programs that aren't used doesn't help, right? It's
Yeah.
not like the movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. In terms of mental health programs, you can buy them and put them out there, but people aren't necessarily coming to them.
Right.
And so I think that the best thing you can do in HR is create an atmosphere, a spirit within the company that is makes mental health talk much easier. And if you can do that, if you can change the culture, and changing culture is never easy, but changing culture can be done by dialogue. You know, talking about it on a regular basis makes a huge difference. And
Mhm.
that's what I see the most important job that HR in this area can do, is creating a culture of openness and a culture of people reaching out and talking to others within their
Mhm.
own little group.
You know, I have this idea in my mind of when I was in even to this day, when I ask people, how are you in a professional setting, I would like be interested to know in the chat what people think is the most common answer that I get to the question, how are you today? Because I wrote about it in my book as well. And the most common answer, I'll give people a chance to answer, but no one, great. Oh no, that's a good one, but it's not that comes to my
Fine,
mind. It's
fine.
busy, busy. Oh, fine. Fine could be. You say, "Oh, how are you doing?" "Oh, busy, 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 busy." And I think that one of the things that would help organizations is to train people to actually answer that question. Like, because if you have people answering that question and not just saying busy or fine, right? Fine, you get a lot. You know, I remember when you were speaking on the panel at Green Shield, you were very open about how you were feeling that day. That was the first question you were asked on that panel. So you were honest, and it's rare that we don't always want to get the like a in-depth, honest answer to that question when we're walking past someone in the hallway and we're having a busy day. But training people in a setting where there's time to pay attention to really answer the question of how are you in a meaningful way could actually be a good starting point. I don't
Yeah.
know what you think about that, Michael.
Oh, I agree. I have a whole bunch of people in my life that I reach out to on a regular basis to find out how they're doing, and
Yeah,
I'll often start by saying, "Hey, how are you?" And
yeah,
the answer is fine, and I'll always respond with, "That's not an answer. That doesn't tell me anything. What am I supposed to learn from that?"
right, right, right.
You know, and I mean, there's two dimensions to this. There's one dimension is that just sort of the casual nature, and we're not looking for companionship at that point. It's just sort of dialogue that we have that's just part of our lives. How are you? Fine.
Yeah, yeah,
But then there's the I'm saying I'm fine, but I'm not really fine, or I'm
right.
okay. I'm not really okay, but I don't feel like I have the license to talk about this. And you have to give people the license to talk about it. You have to make it
Yeah.
clear that what's expected is honesty.
Well, Lilina brought, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, Lilina, but she brought up a really good point here. In addition to not wanting the honest answer, a lot of people wouldn't know how to respond to an answer if many people were honest. So maybe, yeah, some discussion around how to answer these. I love that comment. That's really an important point, is I don't know how to deal with it when someone tells me how they're really feeling. Um, Someone here asked in the chat, just a comment. It's easy or at least acceptable to ask ourselves if our physical health is letting us live our best lives. If someone has diabetes or cholesterol, we talk about kidneys and heart. Somehow we forget to talk about our brain as an organ too. That's a really good point. I think it was more of a comment than a question. Um, so that was a good one too. There's a longer question here. I remember being told long ago that if someone is in a mental health crisis talking about not wanting to live or suicide, that one question you need to ask them is, do you have a plan? If they do, then you must immediately, if they do, then you must immediately intervene and call EAP, a mental health counselor, or 911. Is there anything else we need to ask or know when someone says, they start talking about not wanting to live or suicide?
I think if someone mentions the word suicide in that context, I think that that's you have to act on it. Like you have
Hmm.
you know what's upside downside. Upside is by acting
Hmm.
on it you save their life. The downside is what that I don't really see one, and that's
Yeah.
every sort of guide about mental health says you have
Hmm.
to take the word suicide seriously. And there is like this belief that people have, maybe in part because of wishful thinking. They go, no, it's not,
Hmm.
like my kid said, oh, talking about suicide. And you go, I know, just talking. Because that's what we want to be the case. Like, no one wants
Yeah.
to believe that this person they care about or this person that
Yeah.
they work with is going to seriously consider ending their life. But
Yeah.
you got to take it like you believe it. And
Yeah.
it's not as rare as we believe, right? 4,500 Canadians will take their life in the year 2025.
Wow.
That's almost identical to what it was last year and the year before. And for every person that actually completes a suicide, there's 20 others who attempt suicide. So
Oh
if you've got
gosh.
4,500 and then you've got 20 times that are actually talking about or attempting suicide, you're talking about like 100,000 people. It's not rare. It's not impossible that
Yeah.
somebody really has a problem that they're not dealing with.
Yeah. And I would add to that that if people make a joke, you have to, jokes can actually be a way of communicating when you're too afraid to say how you're really feeling. And that's something I learned in Gavin de Becker's book, The Gift of Fear. Totally different subject. But I thought, oh, I really do listen to people's jokes now. And sometimes I'll follow up. Uh, Will, I can't believe it, Michael, but we're out of time. So I just want to wrap up and we'll close off in a second, but I really love for you to join our next session. Kamara is going to put information about it in the chat, creating a praise culture, which I thought was a really great follow-up from the session that Michael and I are running today. And I know Sherry's on the line as well. I also have some links to some events coming up as social HR camp events. Jeff Waldman hosts those. There's one coming up in Kitchener-Waterloo, one coming up in Toronto. I didn't share those out in my mail out, Michael, recently. And Jeff was like, hey, Amy, you forgot about my events. So I also want to invite you to connect with me, connect with Michael. Michael, where is the best place for people to connect with you?
Well, I actually put it into the chat.
Awesome.
I
Okay,
gave my
great.
my email address, michael.landsberg at empath with two A's.com. That's the company that we formed to produce First Step. And if you want a phone number, I'll give you a phone number too, 416 3807. Once again, the number to call. The hotline is open right now. Let's talk mental health with Landsberg, 416-553-3807. Or you could just ask Amy and she'll give you either my
Oh yeah, sure.
or my phone number.
That sounds, thank you very much for that. I thought for a minute you were doing a 555 number, and I'm like, I've learned from TV that 555 numbers are fake. But
I
I don't have
doubt when I doubt when you call me, it will come up likely spam. Oh,
right, right.
would that ever be insulting?
Oh, yeah, that would be insulting. And I know you would never, ever do that. Listen, I want to say thank you very much for the information you shared, for the expertise that you shared, for all of the work that you do. I'm sure all of us are really grateful because I think you've probably changed a lot of I know you've changed a lot of lives and I think you've really inspired people to do that in their own lives as well. You've certainly inspired me. And it's like I said, you could have done anything with the powers and the skills and the notoriety that you had. And to choose to do good with that is exceptional. Whether you realize it or not, you're willing to admit it, it is exceptional. And you should be really proud of that.
Thank you. The phone number that's on there, 416-553 is wrong. It says 6807.
Okay.
416-553-3807. And thank you for those kind words. But like I said, I get back as much as I give.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is all for today. I will send a follow-up. I'm going to send out the recording for the session as well probably in the next week or so. I've got a busy few days. I've got a conference tomorrow in Kitchener-Waterloo with Nina Gupta, who many of you know from Gowling. But thank you, Michael. I hope our paths cross in real life again soon as well.
Let's make it happen.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining and for sharing all of your expertise in the comments as well. Take care. Bye.